Excellent. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pathways Focus talk for this week, which is on level 3 of the Pathways. Now, interestingly, if you find it interesting, I was the person who gave the inaugural one of the Pathways Focus talks last year, and I spoke on level 2. And at the time that I did that, I had to work out who I imagined the audience would be that I was speaking to. And I decided that I would aim the level of the presentation at someone who was a relatively new VP of Education, therefore would be needing to field answers to questions about the various levels of pathways without necessarily having gone through it all themselves. Don't worry, however, if that description doesn't sound like you, because I nevertheless hope that the talk will contain something of interest and value to anyone who has to interact with this aspect of pathways, irrespective of where in Toastmasters you are. Level 3, it has struck me, is probably one of the areas that requires the least introduction. Quite the opposite to level 2. What I found when I gave my talk on level 2 was that it was quite new to a lot of people, that people who come through level 1 had exactly the same experience as each other, whichever pathway they were on. And some people were actually really surprised when I got to level 2 and explained that it isn't the same in every path, because I think a lot of people had imagined that pathways stayed the same until the end of level 2 and then started diverging, whereas actually level 2 is a different set of speeches depending upon which path you're on. When it comes to level 3, however, I think a lot of people who get to it are already used to what it does and how pathways works. They're already used to the LMS. Now, I suppose I ought to stop there quickly and mention, although I expect most people on this call are already aware, that the LMS, which is the learning management system, the software upon which we currently run Basecamp, is being replaced. And it's being replaced in October, and I'm giving this talk in September. So for about a month, we're going to have a period of time during which Basecamp is essentially going to be down. It's not going to be accessible to us at all. And therefore, we all need to think if there's anything we need to do about that. Now, this isn't a talk about the Basecamp outage, and it's being recorded and is presumably going to be listened to and watched by people after the Basecamp outage. So I'm not going to dwell on the point. The one thing I will say is that up until now, we're used to having 11 pathways. Under the new LMS, only 6 of them are being updated. I understand that the other 5 are continuing. They're not going to disappear in a puff of smoke, and people who are on them will be able to continue on them. But only 6 of the existing pathways are being carried into the new LMS, the new learning management system, this new software that is going to replace what we now think of as Basecamp. So, let's begin. Pathways focuses a series of talks organised by D91 on various aspects of the Toastmasters Pathway programme. I am Andrew Jones. I am the VPE of Red Dragon Toastmasters, which is a pre-charter club, and I am also the VP membership currently of Cardiff Toastmasters, which is a community club in South Wales. In terms of questions, what we've said is put questions in the chat and we'll go through them at the end. My impression is that there are, in fact, only 7 delegates on this call, so I've really no objection, if you want to simply unmute and to ask me a question as we go, and I'll try to deal with it then. If it's something I don't think I can deal with quickly straight away, I will suggest that we put it back to the end, or that we speak offline. And take a screenshot of any slide that interests you. In particular, when I get to the slide of the pathway that you're following, or any pathway that's of particular concern to you, then do take a screenshot of it. Now, level 3. A quick overview of what level 3 is like. First thing to say about it is that you cannot pass level 3 without having previously passed level 2. In other words, you've got to get the level 2 award first, because that's one of the conditions of getting a level 3 award. However, there is absolutely no rule which says that the levels have to be done in any particular order. So it's a perfectly natural thing to do a level 3 talk, if you choose to, before having finished all your level 2 talks. A lot of Toastmasters think that level 3 is the most fun out of all the levels. As a little sideline there, we've got one person whose name I won't mention in our club who, having completed the path, he did presentation mastery, he finished the path, and instead of immediately buying another path and starting on his second path, he chose to come back to level 3 and to do a whole string of projects from level 3, because there's actually quite a lot in there that's interesting and different and slightly off the wall, slightly not in the norm. And therefore he chose for quite a long time. I mean, I think he started a second path now, but basically for over a year, he went back and did the level 3 projects in the path that he hadn't completed. And although there are no badges going for that, he did that for fun and felt that it worked. So level 3 is the most fun. There are always 3 projects to complete at level 3. That never changes. It's always 3. The first one of those is compulsory, but unlike level 2, it's not the same project in each path. So every path has one compulsory project at level 3, but it's not the same one. And you'll find the same thing happens in level 4 and level 5 as well, that there is one compulsory project at each of those levels, but that what that compulsory project is different depending upon which pathway you're following. And the other 2 are electives. There's a very long list to choose from. So far as I can tell, and someone can correct me about this, the list is broadly the same, whichever pathway you're on. That is, you've got a very, very long list of them, and I'll talk through what's on that list in parts of this lecture, but that it doesn't change very much from pathway to pathway. That is, the list of electives are pretty much the same. So let's start with the non-elective speeches and go through quite quickly what they are in each pathway. Again, this is a slide, this slide and the next are ones that you may want to screenshot. And I've already promised Mervyn I'll make the slide card available if wanted afterwards as well. So the non-elective speeches in dynamic leadership, the non-elective speeches negotiate the best outcome. Dynamic leadership tends to be a bit more focused than some of the other pathways. And I recall that when I did this one, negotiating the best outcome, it was the only time I've ever given a speech, a theme tune. I'm not 100% sure if that's the next slide that's going to come up. Yeah, I did it in the style of Dallas. So I created a theme tune, put a song to it, and added myself into the title card of the Dallas themes, which was fun enough to do as it went. But also, it seemed to me a useful way of getting into the idea of presenting the negotiation speech, because I could then describe my negotiation by using characters from Dallas, which those of you who don't remember it was a very well-known soap opera of the 1980s, as the characters in my negotiation to protect the innocent, as it were, when I was using a negotiation that was the real thing. So it's a it's an interesting project, and as I say, it's compulsory if you're following that pathway. In engaging humor, the compulsory one is called Engage Your Audience with Humor. I don't know if any of you find this, but what I've found, having followed the engaging humor pathway for quite a while, is I'm often evaluated on the basis that if you're doing something from the engaging humor pathway, it's meant to be a funny speech. And evaluators sometimes criticize me for not having done a funny speech. The reality of that is that when you look into it, most speeches that are on the engaging humor pathway are projects which are also on other pathways, and humor isn't necessarily a component of them. But I would certainly say with this one, make your audience laugh. Please make your audience laugh. In motivational strategies, the non-elective is understanding emotional intelligence. Last chance to take a screenshot on this slide before I move on. Emotional intelligence is an interesting one. It's about keeping a diary of your moods and then using that as information for a speech. It's not one that I've ever done, but as I'm hoping to demonstrate as we go through this talk, the level 3 speeches do sometimes give you a bit of an opportunity to do something that's somewhat different from the norm of an ordinary Toastmaster speech. In persuasive influence, the non-elective is called understanding conflict resolution. In presentation mastery, it is persuasive speaking that is the non-elective. And in visionary communication, it's develop a communication plan is the non-elective. So we've quickly gone through the non-electives on the 6 paths which are going on to the new LMS. Moving on from there, I've put on this slide the non-elective project for the 5 paths which are not moving on to the new LMS. So if any of you are following them or need that information, then this might be a good slide to quickly make a note from or to take a screenshot of. That brings us to the collection of the elective speeches at level 3. And there are loads of these. And as I say, I think some of them are really interesting and worth a watch. Active listening. It's often first on the list, I think, because when most of the lists in the books are written in alphabetical order. So active listening comes up near the top. It's actually an unusual project because it involves being the topic master. Now, I often found at first that people would try to schedule active listening as if it was a speech because they hadn't realized how it needs to be done. In fact, I've found that as a VPE, you've got to do some weird gymnastics, especially if you're an EasySpeak user, and our club does use EasySpeak. On EasySpeak, of course, it won't schedule active listening as a table topic session. It will schedule active listening as a speech. And the only way I've found of doing it so that it works and records the fact that it's worked is to put active listening as a project at the very end of the meeting, after the end of the meeting, and having it not show on the agenda by unticking the box which displays it on the agenda. That way, someone is shown as having done active listening. You then allocate the same person the job of being table topics master during the meeting. Another amendment I make while I'm doing an active listening speech on EasySpeak is I create a 3rd table topics evaluator, or if you prefer a 6th evaluator, it doesn't really matter which way you do it, an evaluator whose job is to evaluate the table topics master. Because we don't normally at our club, and I expect most of you are the same, we don't normally have an evaluator of the table topics master unless the general evaluator chooses to do it. But because for active listening, being the table topics master is the project, it needs evaluation, and we actually have someone stand up and give an evaluation speech, which I think is fairest. I think that's the best way of doing it, but it does involve a bit of juggling, so to speak, when you're trying to put the agenda together on Easy Speak. But in other respects, really is, I think, one of the most satisfying projects. I've completed two paths myself and used active listening as one of my projects on both of them. And I've also seen it done quite often. I think it's a particularly good one. So it's one that I'd recommend people pick when they get the opportunity. Connect with storytelling is also one of my personal favorites. I've done it again and again and again. You know that there are some people in Toastmasters who, yes, they make progress towards the project, but there'll also be a speech that they've given 9 times because they've used it repeatedly in contests, or whenever anyone says, we haven't got a speaker, can you stand up and give a speech? And I've got one of those called the Limerick Toastmasters Club that is the level 3 Connect with Storytelling speech, and I've used it again and again and again. Also, I personally, take this or leave it, feel that storytelling is a little bit underrated in the pathways schema, that storytelling is really at the heart of what communicators do. It's all about telling a good story, and that pathways focuses on that less than I personally would like. Therefore, please do the Connect with Storytelling project and repeat it, do different things, do the same speech again. I really like it. And if you looked on my Easy Speak, you'd probably see 9 green ticks, all of which were Connect with Storytelling, and which never really helped me on my way to another certificate or another level, but I'm still very pleased I did them. Connect with your audience is a project with a similar concept. It's all about relating directly to the audience that you've got. Creating effective visual aids is mostly about the use of PowerPoint. And it's a good one when someone is asked to do a speech, for example, like the one I'm giving now. If someone wants to do this type of speech and wants to have it evaluated as a project, then this is a fairly good project to use for that. There are other Pathways projects that fit for that. It doesn't have to be about PowerPoint, of course. I personally have been a Toastmaster since the very early 2000s, when PowerPoint wasn't ubiquitous like it is now, and I've seen the speech done often, or its equivalent under the old schema, done quite often with other types of visual aids, you know, fluffy toys and puppets and things like that. But nowadays it tends to be all about the PowerPoint. Now, Deliver Social Speeches is a lovely little project, and I think it's one of the hidden gems that isn't done very often, but is always lovely when it is done. The basic idea is that you deliver a speech for a social occasion, like a wedding, a prize giving, a funeral, but there are plenty of options. You can give a roast and so on. One member of my club, who again I think ought to remain nameless, did as their social speech their talk to an Alcoholics Anonymous club. So, you know, there are plenty of possibilities, and it's a colourful project to do. One of the neat things about it is that it's not one speech. It is 2 short speeches. I think it's 3 to 4 minutes. So you can do a speech at one meeting, a different social speech at another meeting, in order to get the project. And I like those ones that have got something a little bit different to them. I also particularly like projects that involve a short speech, because sometimes when you've got plenty of time, you can ramble a bit. And if you've got a speech that's quite good at 7 minutes, you sometimes find that if you cut it down to 4 minutes, you're saying what's important in it, you're getting to the meat of it, and you know, you improve your speech by making it cut. So that's one of the things I like about that project. Uh, effective body language is a project by itself. It always used to be effective body language. I think it was written for level 1, and that they gradually, what happened was that they merged together, didn't they? Body language and vocal variety into one project, but they didn't delete the effective body language project. They just turned it into a level 3 elective. Oh. I wasn't sure what happened there. Anyway, that's me exhibiting effective body language, possibly, or not. Uh, Focus on the positive is an elective speech. I've never done it or seen it done. So if anyone has any experience of that in real life, I would love to hear about it. Inspire your audience is about giving an the inspirational talks that we used to see towards the I don't know, some of you, by the way, may not remember the old pathways, but there used to be inspirational talks at the end of the old competent communicator manual, and I think that's where the Inspire Your Audience project came from, is so that ability to give inspirational speeches and the opportunity to do that would be carried forward into pathways somewhere, and the somewhere that it is the Inspire Your Audience project at level 3. Know your sense of humor is also a humorous project, and part of the reason that it's there is that when uh, when engaging humor was first introduced as when engaging humor was first introduced, pathways had already been in existence for a while. So the sense of humor project had to exist in the other paths before there was an engaging humor project, because engaging humor followed on after the others had already been in existence. The next one is making connections through networking. I've seen that given quite often. What you'll find, by the way, is that some things which are compulsory at level 2, and this is an example of it, compulsory at level 2 in a particular pathway become electives at level 3 in all the other pathways. And the connections through networking is an example of that happening. Prepare for an interview is what it says, but there are projects that involve actually interviewing someone. So instead of one person taking the stage, shaking hands, 2 people take the stage, and you put 2 chairs on the stage sometimes and have people being interviewed, side by side. Understanding vocal variety, again, another one that followed on from the old pathways, and the fact that at level 1 they then merged vocal variety with body language, leaving the understanding vocal variety project to become an elective at level 3. Then there's using descriptive language. And there's a lady doing so in the guise of Hamlet. And then there's using presentation software, which of course is also another opportunity to do a speech that uses PowerPoint. Indeed, I think that one is, as it were, limited to PowerPoint in the way that the visual aid speech might not have been. So to summarize where I've got to with level 3, all the level 3 projects are interesting and challenging, so enjoy them. One is compulsory in each path. The others are electives from a really rather long list. Use Basecamp to ensure you fully understand each project. I'm finding that's an issue that some newer members don't have a great enthusiasm for Basecamp, and others do. I think it's fair to say that if you were in higher education at the moment, using an LMS will be second nature to you, because You'll have used one at your school, you'll be using one at your university, you'll be used to the whole process of how you access that online and how it works. If, on the other hand, you're retired, you may never have seen an LMS in your entire career. I certainly have only come across them in the context of Toastmasters, nothing else. Therefore, Basecamp, which is our LMS, it stands for Learning Management System. Our our Basecamp learning management system, for some people, the fact that we've got to use one is a drawback, whereas for other people it's a massive advantage. And we've all got people in both camps in our clubs, those who are very techy and very enthusiastic about these things, and those who would prefer it if they could read it in a book on a piece of paper. We don't know, do we yet, whether the new LMS is going to make a massive difference there. I'm told it's a great improvement, but I haven't yet seen any demos, so we shall have to keep that one under advisement. But definitely, if you are a VPE, do understand how much you need to support your members in getting through projects like this and understanding what it is they need to do for each one, and be sure to stay alert yourself to the fact that they aren't all necessarily a conventional 5 to 7 minute speech that needs to be scheduled at a Toastmasters meeting. Some of them take a really quite different sort of structure. Plan ahead, liaise with your VPE. So there we are. That's all the material I've got. I've been talking for about half an hour. I think their intention is that these talks, that they're allowing an hour for them now. When we first started, we used to allow 20 minutes for speaking and then 20 minutes for questions. We're a smallish group, so I'm not expecting to have many questions, but I'm happy to field any that we do have before we close. Brian, your hand is up. Brian, next to you, but you're mute.
Yeah. I've just unmuted myself. I'd like to ask a question. You said earlier that there would only be 6 instead of 11 projects, or what we call them.
Pathways, yes.
Yeah, pathways.
Yeah.
So I know you put the list. Could you put the list up so I could take a photo?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Hang on.
please.
Let me
Yeah, let me get my camera on.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, obviously it's slower going backwards than forwards. It doesn't do each individual slide. It does each individual change to every slide. So where I put up a picture or something, it's doing and then undoing them. Okay, so that slide is the 5 which are not carrying forward. So that if you want to try to take a pic of that.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the 6 which are, I spread over 2 slides. Right. So there's 3 of them.
So could you go back to the other one, please?
The one with the 5.
No, the other 3.
Oh yeah, that's that one, and then the other 3 are that one. Yeah. So between those 2 slides, you've got all 6.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Why are they cutting it down to 6?
I don't know. I haven't been involved in the policy discussion. I think what they have done is found that 6 of them are far more popular than the others, and that they're favored, and therefore they thought that pathways needed a bit of trimming down.
Right.
If you want my personal opinion, I think it's a good thing. That is, at the moment, what you've got are 11 pathways, all of which are really, frankly, very similar to one another.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's not like you're giving someone 11 meaningful choice between 11 things. Also, 11, there's analysis paralysis problem with that as well, isn't there? That's a big number to choose from.
Yeah.
There's a fear of missing out issue on, well, what have the other 10 got that the one I have chosen hasn't? Which would turn out, I feel, to be quite false, because as we've seen, when you get to level 3, most of the speeches are available to anyone, whichever pathway they're on. Most of the projects are. Also, if there's a project that was a compulsory project at level 2 for somebody else, well, it's available to you at level 3 as an elective as well, usually. Therefore, there's not much of a problem with that. The only exception I've found is there's a project that's about timekeeping, which is on one of the projects one of the 5 that's being sidelined, that isn't available anywhere else. But I
Oh,
can
right.
only assume that not many people liked that one and weren't doing it.
Yeah, well, say timekeeping. Yeah, you could be the timekeeper for
Yeah,
the meeting.
I agree. And timekeeping, being a timekeeper at a meeting is a better way to learn that. Um,
Yeah, the other thing where you said the engage in humour, I'm doing that one at the moment.
yes,
And as you said, a lot of these speeches on there don't
they
have
don't actually
humour in
involve
it.
humor. No.
So that, yeah, I've had that when I've done that speech, and someone said, "Well, that that speech wasn't very humorous." I said, well, there wasn't any way that I could make it humorous.
That's true. It's not, and it's not necessarily part of the project, even though it's on that path. I'd like to see them rejig the path a little bit to make it more about being funny, but that
Yeah.
isn't what they've done. I saw something in the chat. Hang on, I can't see chat from here. Chat. Yeah, there was a question from Nick. Um, yeah, Nick Rowland asks, what happens if you complete all the 6 pathways? What do you do? Do them all again? Yeah, possibly. It depends. It depends how fast you can do a pathway. And Toastmasters International say that a pathway takes around about 2 years to do. Therefore, by the time you've done all 6 of the current ones, you've been in Toastmasters for quite a long time and had a decent Toastmasters career. I don't know if you know this, but I've bucked that trend somewhat because I did. I was involved in a project called the Pathway Speedrun, in which I did an entire pathway, giving all the presentations in 2 weeks. I did them between my club's meeting and my club's next meeting, which was absolutely manic and a load of fun. And I'd recommend anyone to take on projects like that, because it was bizarre to do, but it's certainly not what Toastmasters expect. Yes, though, I think is the answer, that you do them again. That is the way Toastmasters has always structured these things in the past. Is, let's think before pathways, someone who completed a DTM and wanted to continue as a Toastmaster would start again at the bottom and would do a competent communicator again, then an advanced communicator bronze again, then an advanced communicator silver again, then an advanced communicator gold again, and then work for the DTM again. And I think, to be honest, yes, that although it's Pathways has only been in for a few years, so there's not many people that have done the equivalent thing. I think that's right. If you complete all the pathways, you may want to start again. I have, however, seen some comment that there are also going to be some new side paths on specific issues. And I'm fascinated to find out what those are about, but I don't have any more news about that yet than any of the rest of you. If you look in your email feed, you'll probably see something from Toastmasters International there. That's the same thing I'm thinking about, and I don't have any more news. But as I say, I understand they think you're doing some side paths, and I'm imagining they're a little bit like there's a side path, isn't there, for the Toastmasters mentoring project, and I'm imagining the new ones might be something like that. But I think we're gonna, this is not a presentation about that, and I don't yet know what those are going to look like. Um, do we have anything else, or shall we stop there? Oh, Claire. Yes, Claire.
Sorry.
So I was just going to comment in support of what you were saying about the 6 being the most popular ones.
Yeah.
In our club, for some peculiar reason, I decided to sort of analyse which paths everybody was on, and there were only 2 people that were on any of the 5 that have been booked. Everybody else was on the 6. So I think, okay, yeah. We reflect the trend. That was just out of interest.
Yeah, you're not the only person who's told me that they've reached that conclusion within their own clubs as well. And no, I think that's very true, and it's probably interesting. Excellent. Brian, one more question before we stop.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask, how long is it going to take them to put this thing up or rejig this thing, or whatever you call it?
Well, they have said that they've given 2 dates, but they're both in October. So it's basically almost the whole of October that is out. So what they're announcing at the moment is that by the 1st of November, the new system will be up and running and it'll all be working.
Right.
So we shall see. Grace, have you got a question?
Yes, I do. So, you mentioned about doing the speed run through pathways, and it got me thinking. One of the things we have in our club is motivation to complete pathways and even make it to level 3. So what would you say has been your biggest motivation? What would you kind of share to others?
Well, obviously I can talk about other people, and I think that was my biggest motivator, was that when I started talking about it, and certain other people in the club who were sort of really enthusiastic and sort of said, wow, that sounds like a bizarre idea, why don't you go ahead and do that? And some people were very supportive about it. I won't name names, but I can think of 3 people who some of you will know, because they were all 3 of them VPEs at various clubs at the time, and most of them are district officers in some way now. And they sort of just pushed me and jogged me along. What motivated me most, other than other people? I think just the idea that it was a real challenge, the idea that when I Googled it, they said this should take 2 years. And I was going, well, there must be a limit. There must be a time in which you can do this. And in the end, I've concluded that it could possibly, in theory, be done in a day. You'd have to have done in advance everything other than the presentations themselves. And you'd also have to find online or hybrid meetings that were happening in every hour of your magical day, so that you could join them from a computer and just keep doing it. But yeah, I think I was very proud of the speed run, but I think there's another much more challenging project ahead that one day I'd really like to do. Anyway, we've digressed a bit from the subject of level 3.
I'm keen to know what that project is now, Andrew. You've inspired me.
I mean, it is the doing it in a day. That is the super challenging project that, well, I'd like to know if it can be done. We will find out.
Goodness, yeah, because it's the higher level, so like the level 5 projects. I mean, some of them require 6 months work first, don't they? So it would have to
absolutely.
be
you would
prepared well in
have done
advance.
everything other than the presentations in advance. And of course, when I did the speed run, I did the same thing. I lined everything up in advance so that it was only the presentations themselves that I had to give during the period in question. Anyway, let us stop there, and thank you all for coming. Shall we stop recording and see you all at the next one of these events?
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.